Innovation and creativity are central to entrepreneurship. But what happens when you go beyond the edge? The Frontier Entrepreneurship Podcast brings you the world's first, the disruptive, the avant-garde. We take you to the frontier in conversation with the entrepreneurs who are the forerunners of the industries of the future. Get to know their world with co-hosts Braden, Kemp, and Tracy Morningstar. A crowded airport, endless lines of jets, a lot of flying, and a lot of emissions. Is there an opportunity? What if we could reduce the carbon footprint of private jet travel while providing wider access? Smaller capacity aircrafts actually offer a high level of safety, security, quality, and comfort. Seeing this opportunity, Canadian entrepreneur Sarah Paterson jumped in, and her startup has taken off, supported by our friends at the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business. Today, we take you to the frontier of travel and transportation systems with Jetsplitz.
I'd like to welcome Braden. As always, I'm very excited about our next guest today.
Yeah, great to be here, Tracy. Good morning.
Today, we're taking you to the frontier with Sarah Paterson, CEO, founder of Jetsplitz. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I just searched an empty leg, found my destination, negotiated successfully the split of an empty leg. Now me and my family are off to Paris on a charter, sitting back, enjoying our best life. Sarah, is it really just as easy as that?
Yes, and actually we further that. We now offer empty seats, so not just empty legs. Typically when you fly commercially, you choose your seat, and so the whole private jet world has been operating around a whole flight, actually. So when I first looked at, where's the gap in this market, or kind of stumbled on the gap in this market, we saw that there was a real need for pairing people up to fill seats. So if you are going to Paris with your family, you don't have to charter the whole plane. You could select your seats and then materially reduce the cost.
Sarah, for those of us like myself who've never flown private, how different is that experience from your standard trip to the airport with a family of four on a busy weekend?
Yeah, and I'm not privy to flying private, at least before the pandemic, and I was fortunate enough to be able to have a friend with a plane. And when you fly private, the convenience factor is it's the best. You take your car, you drive it up to the plane. They'll park it for you. You bring all the stuff you want, any food, if you have kids, any food, baby food, bedding, whatever it is that you want. If you want to bring food, whatever it is that you would like to bring. And maybe we should not put the alcohol part in our podcast, but personally for you to know. Whatever those items are that you particularly need that you can't necessarily bring on a commercial jet, you can kind of load them on. So you get to bring everything and anything that you really want, obviously within following the rules, but which means you just walk right on the plane. And then when you they come on, they check our passports and everything. And then when you land in a private airport as well, and you get off the plane and they scan all your stuff, security, and then you just drive right to wherever your destination is. So you skip out on the inconvenient hours of waiting at the airport, delays of, planes. If you're going to New York, often there are, flight delays. And so now you have sort of that, comfort zone of flying, when you've sort of booked it. Now, weather, permitting.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you.
When you're talking about how you're able to have that sort of luxury into the plane and your needs are sort of met, who do you communicate with to set that all up within the plane?
So we're a white glove service. So Jetsplitz will handle all, requests that you may have. We'll set up everything from the moment you get out of, take a step out of your house, to landing at, the plane, what food you want on the plane, to when you land at the FBO, wherever your destination is, and then getting you from your destination to your, a hotel or AirBnB, whatever it is that you may want to go to. We also will help, locate some Airbnbs or hotels if you really need.
So, Sarah, who are the owners typically of these jets? Are they leasing companies? Are they private owners? Is it a mixture of both? And why aren't they, or if they are, how are they doing it differently, already selling empty legs or empty seats?
So operators are not allowed to sell empty seats, and operators. So there are a lot of operators that we use. We're like Airbnb or Uber, where we don't have our own planes. So we utilize all the operators out there around the world. It's basically, if you could think of it, almost like a puzzle that we're putting together. We utilize these operators just like anyone would if you charter a plane. So if you charter a plane, you charter the plane to get you to your destination, and then for the plane to actually reposition back. So if we're talking about Canada or Toronto, let's say, if you fly from Toronto to Florida, the plane will reposition back all the way to Toronto after it's dropped you off in Florida. And when you charter a plane, you have to pay for, sort of both legs. So our premise is to pair people up and use the operator so that, we can get the best use out of each plane. So when you fly private, these repositionings are called dad legs. And that's exactly what they are. They're dead. They kill the environment. There's a carbon footprint sort of problem here when there's over 1 million empty legs around the world each year. So it's really about extending this beyond the ultra high net worth and corporations and closing that gap between business class and private jets.
So the customer that chartered the flight from Toronto to Miami, in essence, as part of their fee, they're paying for that plane to return empty anyways.
Yeah.
So there really hasn't been any sort of incentive to sell that leg or to fill that leg for the jet owners or the charter companies, because it's already paid for. Is that fair to say?
Well, every operator is different, and they handle sort of those legs differently, and they'll help you out when they can. So that's, super great, but it's only when they can, and it's right out to their network. So with a more widely scaled network, you'd have more options.
Being a self-taught programmer at 15, graduating one of 3 women in information systems, and speaking at Harvard Business School, does these milestones create that confidence as you continue to build your technology?
Well, when I graduated as a woman, it wasn't really, revered as much as it is maybe today. So, my career, and it took a pause for, family and stuff. But when I was building out my career, it wasn't like it is now, where you could be a proud Indigenous woman in tech building your career. It was very different back then. And I was obviously very proud of, graduating. The only 3 women actually graduated. So it wasn't, just 3 women of many. It was all 3 of us graduated, which, we were all very proud. And growing up in a male environment was really tough. And so, you really just sort of went through life doing what you could, as opposed to thinking that, you could really succeed as a woman. Now it's very different. So as I start looking back on my, sort of milestones or accomplishments, I actually say to myself, well, I can't believe I did that. Or, I am proud that I did that, because as I have 3 daughters of my own, I'm teaching them to be proud of, whether they're drawing a picture for, whoever, for me, or for school, or, if they're, competing in a triathlon at school, you just be proud for what you've done and where you've gone. So as I'm preaching this to my daughters, I'm actually taking a look back at what I've done and going, yeah, I get to be proud too. So it is sort of a learning for myself as well. I had a father who was very, very supportive and really drove business into me, which I'm so grateful for. He's now passed, but he taught me all these amazing lessons and, sort of, subtle hints about, what I could do and where I could go without sort of telling me that, which I really appreciate. And, had he been around, he would see all of the great things, he set me up for. And I hadn't realized that. So, I really appreciate that.
Are you starting to see more representation from groups that have traditionally been underrepresented in technology? So I sort of work on the periphery of technology, but not inside technology companies. And there's this theme of, the tech bro in technology companies. Is that changing now?
Not as fast as probably we'd like to see it. It's been a challenge to have, find some Indigenous tech people to hire, which I'm actively seeking. And so, whereas you see, a lot of coders will, there's a lot of coders, from Ukraine or from South Africa or, sort of coming out of school, India, if it would be nice to see more underrepresented, sort of communities like the Indigenous community. And I just don't think we're there yet. And hopefully with Jetsplitz, we're, changing the narrative on what Indigenous people can do, and where, you can go in life. And especially for, females, you can be a techie as well.
Absolutely. And, it's great to see that kind of attitude. And we've spoken with a number of people who've said that from the inside of the tech community, and the answers tend to be similar, that change is coming, but it's not as rapid as it should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
In creating a culture of success amongst your team, what do you see as your future employee and the character traits that you're looking for?
Well, we're looking for the skill set. I think the world really does need to hire on a skill set versus ticking a box. I think we really sort of, we're trying to accomplish the right thing. But I think that if we can really focus on, driving the confidence into different communities, underprivileged communities, then we can sort of have those people come up with the skill sets. So, we have different job opportunities. So it just really does depend on the job opportunities, but they have to fit the skill set.
I want to maybe jump back to sort of better understanding commercial flights, private flights, and that sort of thing. Commercial flights are extremely tightly regulated. You've almost, in some sense, created a new category of flight here. Are there regulatory hurdles or changes that had to be made before you could bring this service to the market?
Yes. So I hired a lawyer who actually is also Indigenous to help me go through all the hoops that I needed to with my legals and insurance before I could, sort of start that. And that took quite a bit of time. But yes, those are all sort of confidential legal matters. But yes, we went through a series of months of preparing to make sure that this is done and done right.
Makes sense. And then, with those changes and this sort of, I guess I would maybe call it a somewhat of an opening of private flight to a new market. Was there any pushback from the industry in terms of a desire to keep the private air travel ultra exclusive, or has the industry been accepting?
Well, the private jet industry is exploding, and it's continuing to explode. I think, so here's how I explain it. So basically before Uber, if you wanted a black car to pick you up and bring you to your destination, whether it be a lunch, a business meeting, a private event, a dinner, you had to pay the black car to pick you up. It would sit and wait for you, all day or a minimum amount of hours. And then it would return you back home or wherever you come from. So, and this cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And so really it was only for the ultra high net worth and corporations. And, sort of you have that, the taxi cabs where, they were waiting, you can most certainly call, but, wasn't the most convenient until Uber came along. And it was originally called Uber Cabs, and then they changed it to just Uber. But Uber basically disrupted the market in, were people upset? Yes, but has it offered a service that wasn't there before, and now you can get a black car for $50 or $100? So it's just sort of adjusting to the technology, and sort of, I think from your televisions to your clocks to your TV or your fridges, all of this technology is coming out and it's bringing new opportunity. The same as Airbnb. So Airbnb, if you wanted to, you only really could rent from a hotel or, say if you knew someone in Barbados, you could rent their house from them. Now you have much, much more opportunity being able to rent someone's villa or, their house or, a bedroom, making it, more feasible and a lot more opportunity for everybody. So it's a changing time. And here's how I would explain it. So far, there's been no real pushback. When I have conversations with operators, I tell them that I'm an aggregator. They already have the ultra high net worth and corporations that they're working with, and they're going to stay like that, and it is exploding. So there are more people wanting to fly private post pandemic. But there are also an aggregated amount of people who are also flying post pandemic. So those who wanted to travel but couldn't travel or wouldn't travel on a commercial plane, so they paired themselves up. So they started, fly sharing, and so the whole ride sharing because of Uber and the house sharing because of Airbnb, the whole premise has already been accepted. So now with moving forward, the fly sharing, we're extending it. So really the operators and the memberships and the plane owners, they're all going to have what they already use as a service. And if they like it, they'll stick with that. What we're doing is we're aggregating more people. So we're bringing the operators, the flight owners, more people to fly. So when you own a plane, if that plane sits, it's just burning money. If you have people who are flying it or renting it or chartering it is the terminology, then it actually becomes a little bit more of an asset versus something that's just sitting there only when you want to fly it. So there's a lot of benefits to having, aggregating more people that typically would never fly private unless they were offered this opportunity.
Interesting. I guess the market is a little different. I sort of had filed it in that same category of the type of business that could see the pushback that, for example, Airbnb saw from the hotel industry or Uber saw from the yellow cab industry. You're not really displacing anybody from a realm of business that they were already in. You're more just creating new opportunity for a customer that didn't exist before.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring them new people.
In building your customers, you had talked about marketing. How are you marketing the product? And how do you build that network to market?
So I spent a few years building out the proprietary software and then throwing up a beta version. In that beta version, I went to our basically a Rolodex. My husband does a lot of business around the world, so I was fortunate enough to be able to sort of call upon those people. And when I realized that there could be an opportunity here to solve the capacity utilization problem, I sort of went for it. And so now what I'm doing is I'm marketing it to, basically anybody and everybody we know, as we're still building out the technology. So we're still building out the technology and then working with different sorts of groups and partnerships to sort of have a pipeline coming up kind of thing.
You mentioned, being in the process of still building out the technology and I assume sort of fine tuning the business model. What does success look like 5 or 10 years from now for Jetsplitz?
It looks like a household name, like Airbnb and Uber, with a coined term, we're jet splitting. Are you jet splitting today? We're going to jet splitz our way to Florida. We're going to jet splitz our way to Paris. And, while giving back to the Indigenous community, really helping, our people. And success, to me would mean if it's dropping Starlink into a reserve and having customer service, back-end support from people who live on the reserves, being able to help Indigenous people, have stable jobs, where we can use the technology and be able to deliver great service.
That's neat. I like the anecdote of, having a catchphrase like that. It's not, I've asked that question to a lot of people and I haven't had that answer come back before. That's very cool.
Well, you Uber everywhere and you're going to go, everyone's, are you going to go on Airbnb? And so, and look, there's a lot of, people trying to solve this capacity utilization problem. I do think a name is important. And so I feel, if you can split the jet, with other people and it works for you, then, why not? Let's go Jetsplitz.
Private air travel has been in sort of the news lately, coming under the microscope from an environmental perspective. Do you see Jetsplitz as an opportunity for these private operators, charter companies, etc., to do better environmentally, but also maybe to help clean up their public image?
Yeah, I'm hoping that, tackling this dead leg carbon footprint waste, that they'll welcome it, as opposed to push back. I think everyone's trying to do their part and, you can donate some money towards a program, but that's not good enough. We shouldn't have empty legs, dead legs, just flying back empty. We should be able to, utilize what's out there to be able to fill them. They're going to fly. So, it's like a commercial plane. So if we can minimize the amount of wasted flight, I think it would help the reputation a lot. It's, whether it's commercial flights or private flights, it's not great for our carbon footprint at all. But everyone is going to continue to fly. So we might as well do what we can instead of, we might as well try to accomplish, what we have and make it the best in what we're doing.
Do you feel like that's an issue that the operators are aware of? Like, are they thinking about that, or is it part of your pitch to them to say, hey, these empty legs are not looked at kindly, and we can help you with it?
I just think it's not their business. It's operating planes, operators, the memberships, or flight owners. It's not their business. And so, they're trying. There's definitely people who are trying, and then it's just the lack of being able to execute it. If you don't have anyone to fill that leg, you don't have anyone to fill that leg. So it's just, it's their business. So I think, there's a lot of businesses that need to look at how to do better to save our earth and what we can do better. And I think, when you have so many individual operators, they're not sort of coming together, necessarily. They're not talking together necessarily all the time. So, with a program like this, where we can come in and help accomplish that, it hopefully will be welcomed. And that way we can start, also filling, those empty legs and working towards a better, environment. But if we also, in addition, can give back, we have been looking at programs and how to implement programs, as we get busier to give back to our carbon footprint, whether it's planting trees or doing, specific contributions. I think that's really great. And I do see a movement with operators or corporations that are like, some of the other larger operators or memberships, they are giving back that way. So everybody wants to do their part. It's just, how do you do that? And how do you do it the best way possible? So, we're going to hopefully provide an opportunity here that they can take us up on.
Yeah, that's great.
You had mentioned Sarah Blakely as someone who has inspired you. What is it about her that inspires you?
Well, she started her company, with $5,000 and she had an idea and she went for it. And at the time, it wasn't a conventional idea of, are people going to welcome this? I mean, it's blown up since. But the one thing that, I really admire is that she kept it public. She didn't make she kept her company public, and she's building an empire. And she's, paving the path for women to do the same thing. Look at Airbnb and Uber. And I say those because, I'd really admire both companies. But they're both male founders and in the US. So, it's nice to see female founders being able to, trailblaze their path, through. And then it's inspiring for other women and our young girls. We can do it all. It's not an easy balance, but we certainly can do it all. So if you have women who are already doing this, then you can see it's done. When you don't, I think as you get older, you get wiser because you experience things. So, when these are things that we teach and pass along to our children. When you have when you have companies that are all male dominant, it's not easy to think that as a woman, you can also do the same thing. So when you have these female figures that are paving the path, it gives you the confidence that you too can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you have 3 daughters. How do you balance that schedule of starting a technology company and growth company and all of the schedule constraints that come with that with family life?
I struggle. I've always been an entrepreneur, and I've always sort of worked, except for sort of a period of time. I didn't work as much, but after I had my first daughter, my father actually passed away on the same day that she was born. So that sort of sent me into a whirlwind, and I took a pause. So when I decided to launch this new tech company, it actually just started as an idea, and then to figure out a solution that I saw a problem, and then it just kept building and building. So naturally it was, my time was much more devoted to my children. And then now I'm all day, every day on this tech company. So, I value a company that supports family. I'm a big family person. So, I value a company that supports that. So if that means that you have to go and pick up your kids at 3:00 and you're pausing for an hour, as long as there's nothing urgent, please go pick up your kids and do that, and then come back and then finish up. So, I think we have to support women and men who are raising families to be able to do both. I think there's a lot of value in being there for your children, not just working. And I think post-pandemic, everyone sort of got a little bit of a taste of that, maybe more than they wanted at times with the homeschooling. But it's great, I think, to be able to try to at least balance that. I am running nonstop from the moment I get up till, late night hours when I'm finalizing emails or looking at, documents, whatever we're working on that day. So it is definitely more challenging. More challenging, I would say, for me than my husband. I very much focused on the kids, and he works a lot as well. So, when he can, he helps and he steps in, but, he's on a plane flying out every other week, for a business meeting. So just, due to location, if he's not around, then it's all me. So it's always me, taking care of the kids, and it's always me, running the business and, making sure we have, whatever we have for dinner. Like I have to balance everything. It's not just, parenting and business. It's the whole life that we live that needs to be balanced. So, one of the things that I do that I've passed along to a bunch of people who've asked me is, and I don't know if you have kids or not, so if you do, this is very valuable. And I learned this trick through a parenting, it's called Positive Parenting Solutions. And what you do is you spend 10 minutes with your children, consistently at the same time every day. So we picked before bed, and we've named it each with my daughters. We give it our own name, and I put my phone down, and that's the key to it, because I think technology is so great when it's working, and but our kids may not find it so great when they're trying to get our attention. So you put your phone down for 10 minutes, and you ask them, what do you want to do? And they tell you what you want to do. I want to play cards. I want to draw. I want to play a game. And we do that for 10 minutes. We put a timer on. When the timer is up, I share with them how valuable it is to me and how much I enjoyed our time together. And then that sets them into a nice bedtime routine, because they feel like their bucket's filled. We feel like I feel like my bucket's filled, and everybody's happy. And so just those 10 minutes, each and every night really do help a lot. So there's sort of these sort of things that I'm working on and learning as I go, how to make it, a much more less guilty balance.
I think that's great advice for anyone who's a parent and trying to run a business or has a regular 9-to-5 job. So I have a 6-month-old, and something that's new for me is remembering, hey, put that phone down, and just be present in the moment. So I appreciate that detail in that answer.
Yeah, I think this is a good way to end the conversation. Thank you very much, Sarah. It was very nice having you.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back after this short break.
The Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business builds bridges between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, businesses, and communities. CCAB offers a diverse array of programming, including training, networking, major business awards, and national events. Head to ccab.com to explore resources, connect, and help build a new economy based on mutual respect and shared prosperity.
We return to the Frontier Entrepreneurship Podcast with co-hosts Braden, Kemp, and Tracy Morningstar.
Another awesome interview with Sarah. I appreciated her conversation about Jetsplitz being the possible next Uber.
Yeah, it's interesting. You have the companies that she referenced, like Airbnb and Uber, which are essentially, picking up excess capacity, in various markets. It's sort of surprising to me that this is a business model that hadn't already been explored, and that's, I think, what makes it interesting and potentially quite lucrative for Sarah and her company. There's an obvious need to fill empty space on flights, and so why don't we fill it? I love companies that seem to have an obvious solution that no one's come to yet.
Yeah, using Jetsplitz as, that's the next word that we're going to be using in the future. Having the convenience of travel is something that we could all appreciate, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I wonder, she mentioned that the private air travel industry is growing like crazy. Often, not always, but often with scale, you see prices coming down, and maybe shared private air travel isn't all that out of reach for the general public.
Yeah, more affordability for sure. We would all love that. Another thing too that she talked about was family and community, giving back. Always when we talk to these entrepreneurs, they're always talking about giving back their time, their energy, committing to the environment, committing to what they're passionate about. And she obviously has passion for her family and community.
Yeah, it's great to see. It's great to see companies and these people, the entrepreneurs that are starting and growing these companies, not just focused on, the dollar, raising venture capital and selling the company for billions or whatever it might be. They're just regular people with the same sort of pressures and commitments that you and I have, and it's neat to talk to them about it.
I'd like to just take time to thank Sarah for joining us for today's podcast, and you, Braden.
Thanks, Tracy. Always a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for joining us on the Frontier Entrepreneurship Podcast. See you all again next time.
This edition of the Frontier Entrepreneurship Podcast was made possible with the support of FedDev Ontario and the Government of Canada. Special thanks to Victoria Pichler. The executive producer of Frontier Entrepreneurship is Robert Washburn. I'm John Hayden. To find out more, head to our website, ncfdc.ca. That's ncfdc.ca. Thanks for listening.